Hello and welcome to Game Set. You ever play a game and wonder, what is this game doing on this console? And not in a good way. Well, that's what this episode is basically about. Games that should probably be on a far weaker platform. And let's start out with some ninja action. Shinobi from Sega on the Master System was incredible. The rules were a bit different than the arcade on which it's based, but it was still an outstanding game that made every single Nintendo player super jealous. You rescue kids, which is freaking awesome. You can jump up or down, and the screen dramatically scrolls up and down as you do. And you have the awesome first-person bonus stages. It even has a blinking line as your hands move back and forth. Hell yeah, blinking line! But a year later, Shinobi came to the NES from Tengen. And yes, it's Tengen, not Tengen, because there's no soft G in Japanese. And as everyone knows, I'm really good at Japanese. Tengen had fallen from Nintendo's graces by this point, but they were still producing games for the console. And Sega was going to help them fight Nintendo by licensing some of their awesome games, like this one. And yeah. First of all, let's start with the title screen. I don't have a lot of confidence in this guy throwing his ninja stars straight. The gameplay has the same alterations from the arcade that the Master System game does. But man, the graphics are so washed out. And the physics? They're practically gone. Jumping doesn't feel anywhere near as good. Not only that, but you'll be attacked mid-jump before you land, which is against the rules in Shinobi. The NES doesn't care though. This version is also incapable of scrolling vertically. That means this red stage scrolls to the right, and even though you can jump between ledges, it's no longer a vertically oriented stage. I guess the NES just can't scroll vertically. I mean, what else am I gonna think? Not only that, but you'll land on an upper ledge if you touch it during a normal jump. Shinobi rules say that you need to press up and jump to switch between levels. Again, the NES doesn't care about that. The game has a few design flaws. For example, it's super easy to get stuck in here. You can't jump out or even super jump out. I spent way too long in here before I was somehow able to squeak through. Definitely make it a point not to go in there. The bonus stages are still here, but no blinking line. Lame. The music is the same, but now it's extremely boppy. That's right, it's Shinobi for the NES. If you ended up getting this on the NES back in the day, you'd be convinced that it was far weaker than the Master System. And yeah, in a lot of ways it is, but it's not this weak, even without mapper chips. Oh, but later Sega released the Cyber Shinobi on the Master System, or Shinobi Part 2. This came out everywhere except North America and Japan. Sega was on a quest to make the Master System look much weaker than the NES. Tengen Shinobi made the NES look pretty bad, but Sega was determined to make a more broken game. And I think Sega wins, because as you can see, this makes the Master System look like it has trouble even being powered on. It is so choppy. You are the only sprite in the game. Everything else, including the enemies and their projectiles, are part of a dynamically animated background layer. This makes the control extremely laggy. At its fastest, the game only moves at 12 frames per second, so that means the control has, at best, 200 milliseconds of lag.
200 milliseconds of lag.
You can feel the system chugging. Why they chose to do the game like this instead of with traditional sprites at 60 frames per second, I'll never know, but it did it no favors at all. The HUD takes up about a third of the entire screen. Why? This information doesn't need to be this big. Some levels have some decently drawn graphics, you know, if they're not scrolling. But the giant HUD just distracts from them. Don't you love how these big boulders look? They're super easy to dodge when they move like this. You can acquire power-ups and ninja magic, but aside from your overall power level, they're kinda useless. And naturally, there's also a timer. I'm surprised that the Master System had enough CPU left to actually run a timer. The game only has 6 rounds and then it's over, and you'll be glad when it is. Feast your eyeballs on this glorious scene as you fall down a waterfall. It's like pressing a couple of buzzing Nintendo 64 rumble packs against your eyes. My poor Master System. Sega should have known better than to make the game this way, don't you think? Alright, next up is something that supposedly uses 32-bit power, followed by something for the Super Famicom. While 16-bit owners were enjoying finely tuned fighting games like Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat 2, the next generation, super powerful 3DO got Shadow War of Succession from Tribeca Digital Studios. Like those fun games on the 16-bit platforms, this one is also a one-on-one fighting game. It also uses digitized characters, just like Mortal Kombat. But this is the 3DO, so it's gotta be way better, right? Well, as you've already ascertained using that highly calibrated crappy game detector that every viewer of GameSack has, this is definitely not better. It's not even on the same level. Hell, it's way worse in every category. I mean, just look how it plays. You can see with your very own eyes that the physics are way off and the game moves too quickly for its own good. Good luck pulling off any special moves. You really only have time to button mash when it's running at this speed. If you find yourself having a difficult time getting anywhere in the game, turn the difficulty up. Yes, up. This actually somehow makes the game a little easier. Most of the characters couldn't be any more generic looking. Even the stages are extremely dull and empty. There's never a crowd watching the fight or any kind of animation in the background or life at all. The colors are all bland and dim, much like my personality. Every contact a fighter makes with the other results in a poorly drawn blood splat. Because, thanks to Mortal Kombat, these digitized fighting games really had to push the blood. It was definitely prioritized over the gameplay in so many Mortal Kombat ripoffs. I like how even throwing an opponent causes a blood splat before they're tossed. If all of this wasn't bad enough for you, listen to the audio. It's so incredibly distorted and repetitive. Yeah, you're gonna get tired of that after about 30 seconds. There's absolutely nothing redeemable about this game. It'll just make you sad, hell, maybe even mad that you spent any amount of money on the 3DO. And if you paid the original $700 asking price like I did, you'll just be that much more pissed.
My name is Erica Storm. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Here's Big Run on the Super Famicom from Jaleco, only released in Japan. This rally racing game was a launch title for the system, and for this episode, I think a little bit of context will help. I know none of you are looking at this and thinking, hey, this looks fine, what's the issue? Even for a launch game, it does look kind of rough. But there's an even bigger issue with this one, and that is Mode 7. A lot of the other launch games use it, like F-Zero here, which, as you can see, is another racing game. It was the console's fancy new trick, and it looked out of this world at the time. I mean, if you have a racing game on the Super Famicom, you've gotta have Mode 7, why wouldn't you? Well, Big Run is made like any old racing game before it, with an animated road and choppy sprites that grow in coarse steps as they approach the screen. The reason that they did this is because it's a port from an arcade game which was made in much the same way. No fancy Mode 7 here at all. Back then, people didn't know about the intricacies of Mode 7, they just knew that the Super Famicom had smooth scaling and rotation. There is nothing like that in Big Run. Not only that, but the traditional animation isn't even done very well. Notice how choppy the scrolling is going left and right in the background. The objects on the side of and even in the road are even more choppy, often making them difficult to predict and avoid, especially with the other drivers on the road. Imagine importing the Super Famicom back in the day and the only game that you could get is Big Run here. Where is all the smooth scaling that everyone's been talking about? Where is anything smooth? Hell, this doesn't even look any better than Victory Run on the TurboGrafx, and that game was a couple of years older than Big Run. If this happened to you, you might think the Super Famicom was a big scam. Then you'd probably hold a lifelong grudge, eventually making a YouTube channel where you're a Sega fanboy out of pure spite. I'm kidding, but it's easy to be disappointed in this one, even during the launch window. I do want to say though that it does use the high resolution mode at 512 pixels wide for its environmental effects to give kind of a fake transparency. I suppose that they couldn't figure out how to use real transparency. The only bone they throw you are the pixelated mosaic transitions. That is all you have to ooh and ah over until you can get another game. Let's stick with the Super Nintendo for now. Believe it or not, this console actually isn't perfect like some people on the internet might have you believe. In fact, this next game makes Mode 7 look bad. Here's D-Force from Asmic, also on the Super NES. This vertical shooter has the opposite problem that Big Run does. It has too much Mode 7. In fact, the entire game only uses Mode 7. The developers were clearly more focused on attempting to utilize that rather than make a good game. And the problem there is that their use of Mode 7 is mostly bad. It plays like a vertical shooter, same kind of rules and stuff. You have red ships that constantly come up from the bottom of the screen. Destroy them and they give you a power-up. This game is absolutely relentless, so fortunately you don't lose any power-ups when you die. Hell, you barely get powered down much even if you continue. The enemies, along with their bullets, only move at 30 frames per second for some reason, at maximum. They move around fast and change directions on a dime. It's certainly not designed or programmed by experts. I mean, come on, it is Asmic. This all makes the game look extremely janky, and it is. There's also an egregious amount of slowdown. About halfway through the stage, you zoom closer to the ground to take out the enemies down here. The problem is that now the background is rather blocky, while the sprites all look normal. Not exactly a pleasing look. Get to the boss, defeat it, and you'll move on. In the next stage, you can freely zoom up and down at will by tapping either shoulder button. There are enemies on both planes, and you'll need to move to whatever plane they're on to defeat them. The gameplay in these stages is much better, but for whatever reason you can't use missiles and there are no power-ups. Every stage, the game switches back and forth between these two slightly different playstyles, and it will never impress you. Even when this was released, I remember thinking how awful this game looked when I rented it, so it's certainly not something that people thought looked great back then. Not anyone with eyeballs anyway. Everything is made worse by the horrible music. Not only is the sound quality grating, but the tunes last maybe 24 seconds before they loop, over and over. These stages are not short, so if your ears have been bad and you need to punish them harshly, this game will do it. Imagine playing Musha on your friend's Genesis and then coming home and playing D-Force here. I don't think I need to say any more. This is Dark Castle on the Genesis from Electronic Arts. Back in their early days, EA would port a lot of their computer games to the Genesis, figuring that computer gamers and video gamers were even remotely in the same camp. They weren't, not back then, not like today. Console gamers like things that would respond quickly to your input, look good, sound good, and most importantly, be fun. Dark Castle is none of these things. It probably works better on the Mac where it originated, but it does not work on a video game console. The controls are very slow and deliberate. You might feel as if there's something wrong with the controller, or maybe you forgot to fill up the console with gas and it's running out. The game stages try to mimic the classics like Galaxian, or even Donkey Kong. It can't even match those ancient games, and this is a 16-bit console. The graphics are extremely simple. The music never changes once it starts playing in the title screen, and the sound effects will make you want to punch your stupid Genesis. Imagine you're at a friend's house playing Castlevania on his crappy 8-bit Nintendo. You kinda like it, but come on, it's crap because it's 8-bit and you need to show your friend that you're way better than he is. So you save up the money to buy a 16-bit Sega Genesis. You also get Dark Castle because it has to be a better game about castles than stupid Castlevania. And yeah, you'll probably drop kick that Genesis down the street, right after you take a belt sander to your ears. Meanwhile, your friend laughs at you and your Genesis, which is clearly much weaker than his NES. I wonder why Electronic Arts thought that console gamers would enjoy this. Pretty sure they didn't enjoy Budokan the Martial Spirit either. This one's also by Electronic Arts for the Genesis. It's another computer game port that doesn't translate well to home consoles. You face off against various opponents in a tournament in different martial arts styles. It looks okay for an early game. Certainly not great, but it could be worse. The sound is quiet because back then computer games didn't believe in music during gameplay, so we don't get much here. Fortunately, the developers would quickly learn. But damn, the controls here are awful. And I'm not just saying that because I'm used to Street Fighter games. I thought the very same thing when I rented this back in 1990. They're convoluted and not responsive at all. Sometimes a button press will do absolutely nothing. So you could be showing this game on your fancy new Genesis to another friend who only has an Atari 2600, hoping to impress him. You already failed thinking Dark Castle would be better than Castlevania. Surely this guy with an Atari 2600 will think the Genesis is cool. Well, he won't be impressed. He says to you, yeah, my console may have a resolution of about 36 pixels and my controller only has one button, but at least my controller works. Then he laughs at you and tells all the other kids at school how lame you are. You never live it down. You grow up without any friends and eventually die alone. Now, back to some 32-bit power, followed by whatever the PlayStation 2 is. 64-bit, 128-bit, 256-bit, 1024-bit, I don't know. I don't think that spec really mattered by the time the PS2 came around. This is WWF Raw on the Genesis from Acclaim and Sculptured Software. Now, usually I can't play wrestling games very well, and that includes this one, but that's not the point here. What I want you to do is kind of get a feel for how this one looks as I play it. Your opinion can be good, or it can be bad. It really doesn't matter. This is just what the Genesis version looks like. Okay, you got a feeling for it? Alright, now let's say that you spent $150 on the 32X and you want to experience the ultimate version of WWF Raw in full 32-bit glory. And yeah, this is what the 32X version looks like. It's definitely better, but not really much better. Hell, you'd be hard-pressed to notice the difference if they weren't side by side like this. It doesn't do very much to sell people on the abilities of the 32X now, does it? The 32X game is a little squished because it's forced to run in the 320 pixel wide mode as opposed to 256, so the resolution is a little bit higher. That's because the 32X has no 256 pixel mode. This game also came out on the Super NES, and honestly, it looks just as good, and it's not squished like the 32X game is. So, why do I say that the 32X game is squished instead of saying that the Genesis and Super NES versions are stretched? Well, because this particular game was designed with a lower resolution in mind, and that's just the proper aspect ratio of the pixels. The Super NES definitely has the best audio with what sounds like a real crowd. Though I guess this crowd is watching something else where they play with balls and stuff because you hear a lot of referee whistles. It's really sad that the 32X couldn't do much better with this game. I mean, technically it could, but it didn't, and that just makes the add-on look sad. The most impressive thing that this one does is a layer of transparency on the scrolling WWF logos, with another transparency for the menu on top of that. But then again, the Super NES does this as well. I'm surprised that Sega allowed this to happen, and having games barely improved over the Genesis version was a regular occurrence on the 32X. But they were probably just hungry for any third party to put games on this thing.
1, 2, 3.
This is Little Britain the video game on the PlayStation 2 from Mastertronic Group. This was, thankfully, only released in Europe. It's based on a very popular, publicly funded comedy TV show over in, you guessed it, Britain. I've heard that it's no longer on any of the streaming sites over there as it's just too offensive. I'll show you the game though. Your expectations are already low. You're watching GameSack. And dear God, what am I playing here? You start out as a fat girl on roller skates. You need to collect as many of these squares as possible. They're actually CDs, I guess they're just properly packaged. The control is very tough to get used to here, as the physics of your momentum feels incredibly wrong. So does the jumping. The isometric perspective doesn't help either, and it can be difficult to line yourself up with the CDs. The top of the screen is cut off here since I'm playing a PAL game on an NTSC console. As a result, the frame rate improves, but yeah, there's some cropping. Believe it or not, this first stage here has the best graphics in the entire game, and they're well below average for the PlayStation 2. I can't understand a lot of the dialogue from this character though, thanks to the trashy accent. Can someone please leave me a comment and let me know what's being said here?
I've never even done nothing on nothing. I got totally raised that.
Get enough points and you unlock a video cutscene from the show, but it doesn't play properly running at 60 Hz. You also unlock the next stage, where you play as this wheelchair guy who has to do a bunch of dives. You need to make the biggest splash possible, but they didn't put any effort into the splash graphics or the water physics. I've seen PlayStation 1 games that handle water better than this, and it sounds like someone's splashing their hand around inside of a toilet bowl. The next stage is basically Pac-Man, except you play as a lady eating a bunch of food. When you grab this game's equivalent of a power pellet, you insult the enemy to death.
Oh man, I love the cake.
You are fat. Who do you think you are, Fat Farted Slimmer of the Year?
Hilarious! The next stage is called Slut. Yeah. Here, you need to bash frogs. That's pretty slutty, I guess. The next stage is soccer or football, whatever you want to call it, and you need to make 3 goals. By the way, I'm fairly confident that this show had exactly 0 women in their cast.
Go!
Emily Howard? I'm a lady, Emily Howard, yes.
In the next stage, you play columns for a bit as the person eats food. This has got to be the most dollar store implementation of a puzzle game that I've ever seen. Everything is too smooth, there's no rigidness or snapping. After this part ends, you vomit on the people for extra points. I like how they just stand there and take it. The last stage, you're riding a bicycle and collecting gay magazines in the street, all while running over other gays.
We don't want your sauce around here. No, you are not the gay. I am the gay.
Hey, don't get mad at me, I didn't make the game. If you look off in the distance here, you'll see that the background is a low-resolution 2D texture. That is just sad. There's also some slowdown in this stage, but I think that could be the result of me running a PAL game on my NTSC console. Man, imagine that your friend got a game for his console, let's say Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast, or really almost any game on the Dreamcast. PlayStation 2 not looking so hot now, is it? At least you get some narration by one of the Doctor Who's.
Unlike some countries, Britain has 2 genders, ladies and men.
So all of you from Britain, do you have fond memories of this show or this game? Why?
You are fat.
Fat cow, fat cow, fat cow.
You are a big fat thing.
And there you go, a bunch of games that make their respective consoles look weak. And now, as with every episode of GameSack, I need to think of an idea for an end sketch that pretends to be funny, but in reality isn't. I have no idea what I'm gonna do, but you'll find out soon enough. But let me know, what are some games that you think that make the console that they run on look weak? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. It's Pac-Man!
We're gonna get you. You can't run. Nowhere you can go. Come here. We're gonna kill you. We're just gonna kill you, okay? Oh my God, guys, run! No! You got it! Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come here, come here, come on!
Oh, that was close.
Yeah, we're gonna get you.
Got you, bitch. Pew, 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 pew.